You are listening to the Agree to Disagree program on the newamericanmedia.com.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the program. Thank you very much for joining us. We're going to go full steam ahead. Hello, this is Brian with the New American Media.
Yeah, this is Buddy Roemer.
Buddy, it is a pleasure speaking with you, sir. We've been in contact with Carrie, and we're pleased to have you on the program today.
Well, good. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, let's get right into things. And by the way, you got to love a candidate running for office that respects punctuality. Man, you're a far better man than myself. I try, but good work.
I hate to admit my German ancestry. You know, these dead-gum Germans, they're always on time. They're often wrong, but never in doubt.
Well, you're speaking to a gentleman who is half German, Pennsylvania Dutch, and I get the feeling. I'm on the same page with you there. So, buddy,
you've got some mellow in you. That Pennsylvania Dutch is a good cross check on that German. I've got the Irish on the other side of me, so I don't know that I have the best of both worlds. At least I'm fiery.
Absolutely, and you're a gentleman that's willing to stand up and try to make something happen here in a presidential election. I mean, I've run for student...
We're going to do it. We're going to do it. We're going to make something happen. I swear. It hadn't happened much yet, but I think Washington, D.C. is bought and sold. And I don't care about the parties. They're just the same when it comes to the money. They're married at the billfold, and it's a disgrace.
Well, I ran for student government president 2 years in college, and that was difficult enough. I couldn't even imagine what it's like on the national level. You can't even get an invite to one of these debates. They're down to 4 people, and they won't bring you in.
You know, I probably had an over opinion of myself. I don't know whether you've ever had that feeling, you know, that you were faster than others thought, that you were smarter than they figured out. So I probably thought too much of myself. But I'm 68. I'm a realist. I'm a grandfather. I'm successful in business. I was fairly successful in politics, congressman, governor. But I thought running for the president of the United States when the nation was in trouble, when the field was not that distinguished among the Republicans,
right.
And since I was the only person running who'd been a congressman and a governor, I never even thought about not getting in a nationally televised debate. I was just trying to get ready to shape up when I got my chance. But they've had 22 national debates, and I've been invited to 0.
That is very interesting because there's a lot of people out there saying, you look at Mr. Obama's presidency, you look at the 2 terms of George W. Bush, there are people saying that the Democrats and Republicans are 2 sides of the same coin, and they just keep us fighting over fringe issues while we're all being robbed and the government's getting out of control here. Yeah, I want more opinion out there. I want a difference of you come from a different point of view. You have some different stuff to say.
You're right there where you ought to be. You don't know what all the options are. You don't know what woman or man could lead at the time of the greatest crisis. You don't know what will happen in the next 4 years. So what we do in our system is keep it open, keep an active debate, keep looking at different people. We want to see what our options are. We're picking a CEO. We're picking a chairman of the board. We're picking a president. We have a 310 million people country, and we're picking its leader, and we're determined who gets a chance by who's raised the most money from special interest. It's a joke.
I'll tell you what, I've used the terminology. By the way, we're talking live with Governor, and I mean, we still refer to you as Governor Buddy Roemer, correct? Is the governor term?
They do. It makes me nervous, but that's the common usage.
Well, we can say this. We are talking live with Buddy or the 2012 presidential nominee, Mr. Buddy Roemer. I use the same terminology, saying we're hiring a football coach for our country. I don't care where you played in high school. I don't care where you played in college. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what your background is. if you're on the same team, you play for the name on the front of your jersey, not the name on the back of your jersey. And we just need a football coach to get everyone playing on the same page. And I felt such division among from seeing Mr. Obama for 3 years, 8 years of George Bush, back into Clinton, and I feel division instead of what a football coach is supposed to do is get everyone on the same page. Let's talk about the crisis our country's in. You addressed it earlier. What would a football coach do to address the problem? What's the biggest problem today?
By the way, let me use your football analogy and say, you don't know where Nick Saban went to college. He's the best football coach in America. You know, he did it on the field by coaching. He had experience. And so, you know, I don't pretend that because I was a congressman for 8 years and submitted my own budget every year, the only congressman to do it, because I was a congressman for 8 years and worked with the Republicans, even though I was a conservative Democrat and led a group of 40 Democrats called the Boll Weevils, and we gave Reagan his majority, or because I was elected governor and took a state with the highest unemployment rate in America, 12.8%, and cut it in half in 4 years, that doesn't make me qualified to be president. But back to your earlier point, I think it does earn me the right to stand on the stage and ask Mitt Romney what his tax code would be if he were president and he could write a tax code. What would it look like, Mr. Romney? He's never said that. These are the kinds of things that debates ought to be about. And I am frustrated as a proud American that parties have become more important than the country, and that divisions and negative advertising is all that we hear. And finally, the money that pays for this comes from sources we don't even know. $10 million to this candidate, $15 million to that candidate. Who are these people buying our president? These are the kind of things that I think ought to be talked about. And we can talk tax reform, we can talk budget reform, we can talk trade reform, we can talk energy reform, we can talk banking reform, we can talk health care reform, we can talk immigration reform, but none of these things will happen until we have a president free to lead and not owned by the special interest. That's my number one issue. And then from there, we'll get to tax reform, balanced budget, and I'll be glad to talk about those. But I wanted to make the first step in this journey a very clear one. I want a president, and I don't care what party she belongs to or he belongs to. I don't care what part of the country they're from. I don't care their color. I don't care their gender. I don't care what church they go to, if at all. I'll look at all of that. But the most important thing is that I want a president free to lead. I want a president that will work to make America strong again. And it won't happen if they're owned by Goldman Sachs and General Electric.
Well, you make a few good points. We're talking live with Governor Buddy Roemer running for 2012 presidential for the office of president in 2012. You know, you talk about who is owned and which candidates have been put in power or allowed to get in power by their contributions. Our country's $16 trillion in debt. Something between 60 and 140 trillion in unfunded liabilities. These are numbers
Correct.
just so staggering you can't even put into words what's going
Correct.
on.
But they have to be addressed. They have to be addressed. I mean, look at President Obama's budget. I mean, I'm not trying to just jump on one person, but by God, he's the president. He's required by law. It's a law that I helped pass when I was in Congress 28 years ago. The law requires the president to submit an annual budget and to show when it's going to be balanced. And he has 10 years to do that. This president submitted a budget this week that is $980 billion out of balance for next year. And if you believe that, it's a joke. It's going to be $1.3 trillion out of balance. but is out of balance every year for the next 10 years. We owe $15.9 trillion. It's going to double in that 10-year period. Let me tell you again, the president's own number, and I have read this budget, the president's own number in the 10th year under his plan has a national debt of 29.
Buddy, are you still there? I had you at 29. Appears as though we may have to reconnect with Governor Roemer.
Thank you for calling Business First Bank.
We are trying to reconnect with Mr. Buddy Roemer. Buddy's out on the campaign trail. He's checking in with us because it's hard to get time when you're not even allowed on the panel to debate. You know, the GOP nominating process is taken. We're back with Governor Roemer. I was just explaining to people that you're out on the campaign trail. You're running around trying to make some phone calls and speak to some people on radio because you don't even get on to one of the 21, 22 debates for the GOP nomination. Yep. It's like I think a lot of people want a few more ideas, a few more viewpoints. And like you said, you were a governor, you served in Congress, you understand some of the problems, you're approaching it from a slightly different perspective. And I, for one, as a voter, would like to hear your opinion. So I want to thank you for calling it. Where are you calling us from today? Where are you even located?
I happen to be in Louisiana, passing through up in the northern part of the state, headed to Texas tonight. So I'm a traveling soul.
Well, thank you again for joining us. I think where we left off was you were saying how out of balance the budget was with the Obama budget that he just put out. Something you were on the number 29.
Yeah, we had you had made the point, and it's so accurate that our debt is staggering. Excessive debt shrinks a nation. Excessive debt shrinks a company. Excessive debt shrinks a household. We had 5 million Americans foreclosed and out of their home in the last 4 years. Excessive debt is a dangerous thing, and we're there now. By the way, I'm from Louisiana, and the Louisiana Purchase was because of excessive debt. Thomas Jefferson bought Louisiana from Napoleon, and Napoleon and France had fought 3 successive wars and had a debt he couldn't repay, so he sold Louisiana for 11 cents an acre. He doubled the size of America, and France disappeared from the New World. We live in a country that can't repay $16 trillion, and in 10 years, the debt, according to Obama's budget, is going to $29.7 trillion. It doubles in the next 10 years. He does not have a balanced budget over the next 10 years with very excessive growth rates, in my opinion. There is no plan. There's no purpose. The president does not lead the Congress in any sort of discipline. The president's budget for this year cut $24 billion out of federal spending in one section, and that it increased federal spending by $193 billion in the other section. I tell you what you have to do to balance the budget. You need a 5-year plan. You need to cut $151 billion a year for 5 successive years. That's 1% of the gross domestic product. You need to do the following things. You need to scrub everything. Even important programs like military defense needs to be scrubbed. Many programs need to be eliminated. I would eliminate all energy subsidies. I would eliminate all agriculture and housing subsidies. I would eliminate the Department of Energy. I would restructure the Department of Commerce. I would keep it at about $1 billion. That's saving $7 billion, but have it focus on small business. Have it focus on fair trade. I would cut the Department of Education down to $300 million. That would save $78 billion in the budget. I would consolidate information technology. I would have all software compatible. We have 37 different types of software. at the federal level. I would straighten that out. And finally, there are 42% of all federal employees who are going to retire in the next 10 years. I would not replace half of them. I would leave the half of the 42%, that's 21%. I would leave those spaces vacant and replace them with equipment, technology that would give better service. And I give you the post office versus federal express. We need to have a tighter, smaller, more efficient government. And where it exists, it needs to be strong and lean and mean and serve the American people. Final thought. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a lobbyist. I'm a graduate of Harvard undergraduate and the Harvard Business School. I study business. I'm a businessman. I have a $1 billion bank that I built with no bailout money. It's profitable. We didn't foreclose on a single mortgage holder. Here are the lessons to be a successful businessman in the 21st century. There are 4 words. They all start with F. Fast, focused, flexible, and friendly. You show me a company's management that's fast, focused, flexible, and friendly. I'll show you a company that could be king of the world. By the way, what 4 things are the federal government not? Fast, focused, flexible, and friendly. Look, these are common sense lessons. All it takes is some experience, courage, and the freedom to lead. I run against our political system. It's bought by special interests giving big checks, and I want the American people to stand with me. I need 1 million people to stand with me, and we can bring this government to a halt and turn it around.
Well, you're right on something when you're talking about government getting a little bloated, getting a little out of control. And by little, I'm putting that word in your mouth. I'm guessing you would say something much more harsh than a little. Our opinion here is that when government grows, it feasts upon itself, and it becomes this organism that it does nothing but expand. And you reach a critical mass where you're inefficient, you need to trim back, but it doesn't benefit you yourself in the short term to do the hard work. And so then you start making excuses and trying to make different arguments. And I think that's where we're at with our government today. Let me ask you, with our government today, there were a lot of people who voted for our current president, Mr. Obama, who looked at something called the Patriot Act that George Bush signed in a post 9/11 world, really going past the Fourth Amendment, saying, "Oh, we can spy into anything that we want." And a lot of Democrats were just on their soapbox, screaming bloody murder. This is wrong. This is not right. You can't give this much power and authority. And then Mr. Obama comes in, and then you have SOPA. You have the NDAA, where American citizens can be pulled up off the streets with no trial, with no warning, with no warrant. What is going on with our government? You discussed the growth and expansion of this bureaucracy that's not friendly, that's not fast, that's not focused, all those things. But there are quite a few other people looking at the stripping of civil liberties that said, wait, I thought Republicans were the bad guy. Wait, I thought Democrats, wait a minute, are they both doing bad things? And if they are, what is going on here? How would you address those people?
Well, there are some people with a philosophy that government has all the answers. And it's why I changed parties 21 years ago. I used to be a Democrat. I admit I was a conservative one. I mean, I believe in civil rights. I believe in the Constitution. And I was comfortable as a Democrat believing in civil rights and that sort of thing. But the economic policies and the turn to government for all the answers in our economic and jobs life just was destructive to me. So I changed parties. Well, after 20 years of Republican, I find some of the same thoughts exist in the Republican Party. I mean, clearly President Obama is hypocritical when it comes to bank regulation and the Patriots Act. As you well know, I was one of the few bankers that flew to Washington and testified against the Patriot Act. I said, we don't need this to keep the country free. As a matter of fact, this ties our hands on a lot of freedom. We're spying on our own customers, and it's not right. And the Patriot Act should not have been reapproved by this Congress and this president. Of course, President Obama is hypocritical. He talked about how the banks were all the bad people when he was running for office. The first thing they do is do bank reform. Did they eliminate too big to fail? No, it's still the law. Did they replace Glass-Steagall and put it back in bank regulation? No, it's still dead. Did they require that capital ratios for banks go up so that we could reduce the risk in the banking system? Oh, no. Capital ratios have gone down as a bank goes up. And then and here's the answer, Brian. Here's what you need to focus on. President Obama said one thing. He gets elected. He does just the opposite on bank reform. And then where does he go? He doesn't go to Kansas or to Oregon or to Utah or to Texas to have a meeting and listen to the people. He goes to Wall Street. He has a fundraiser. It's $35,000 a ticket. Its chief host is Goldman Sachs. Look, the politicians talk. But what you and I need to do is follow their money. They are bought. Obama to a progressive Democrat must be quite an embarrassment. But if the progressive Democrat would get off his philosophical couch and follow the money, it's worse than he thinks. Not only is his president hypocritical, his president is bought and sold by special interest. Insurance companies, you saw health care reform. I'm a diabetic. I believe in health care reform, but they didn't touch health care reform. All they did was protect insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies and tort lawyers. What they should have done, instead of having lawyers and lobbyists in the room, they should have had doctors, nurses, and patients in the room. And we could have devised a much less expensive health care system. The first thing we would do would be to force insurance companies to compete nationally. Right now, we have a law on the books that prevents insurance companies from having to compete. Each state has its own monopoly. Each state has its own insurance department. There are more local rules, confusing rules, that drive the cost of insurance up. If you cannot buy health insurance across the state line. One of the first things I'll do as president is put the insurance companies under the Sherman Antitrust Act. There's a good Republican, Teddy Roosevelt. They just left out the insurance companies. Everybody else is on it. You can't have a monopoly, but in insurance you can. These are the sorts of practical things, Brian, that if I were on 20 debates and you and I were to have 20 conversations, I could fill you up with practical provisions to how to make this country strong again. And it has nothing to do with party. It has nothing to do with rich people or poor people. It has nothing to do with Washington, D.C. It has to do with honesty, freedom, free to lead. It has to do with following the money and breaking the corruption.
We're talking live with Governor Buddy Roemer running for president in the 2012 election. You are, of course, referencing the 2,300-page, or however many pages it ended up being on its final version, the one that Nancy Pelosi said, "I cannot wait to pass it to find out what's in it." You know, I don't know why they didn't try a couple pilot programs, get some actual feedback, and have these people in the room. You know,
they've got a hidden commission.
It's incredible.
They've got a hidden commission. We don't even know who they are, who will determine what the government will pay for.
Like a super
You saw Obama 2 weeks ago in the Catholics, where Obama said, we're gonna have to give contraceptives and other life extinguishing methods to all your employees, and the Catholics said, well, these are our hospitals and we're open to everybody, but we're not going to give contraceptives to our employees. And Obama's team said, you have to. That's the federal law. That's what it's coming down to in this country.
And
it's ridiculous.
You look at things like the NDAA, you look at the Patriot Act, you look at SOPA, you look at all these things where the government is getting PIPA, of course. You look at net neutrality. Don't forget about net neutrality. We'll get into that later. But there's a lot of people talking right now saying, hang on, if the government will do this, what will they do next? And I've been studying the Revolutionary War for the past 5 years, and really that's where they were pleading with the king, pleading with Parliament, saying,
tyranny.
You need to stop pushing us. You need to stop pushing us. Exactly.
The king has moved to America. And let me just talk straight with you. The king's not in England anymore. The king is here. The king lives in Washington, D.C. The king writes big checks to little politicians. The king has too big to fail, and it runs a $100 billion bank.
Let's talk.
The king has, I don't have to compete. I'm a pharmaceutical company.
Well, let me ask you about this. Let me jump in there about the king, because we talk. This is fantastic to have you, because you've worked in the banking industry. We have so much to talk about with banking, and we have so little time left with you. So I'm going to bounce around to a couple things quickly, because I know you're a busy man.
Let's do it again in a couple weeks when you want to. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
I wanted to ask you. This question came from Mark Clare. He's with Lions of Liberty, and he said, "What is your stance on the Federal Reserve? Do you support an audit? Would you support legalizing competing currencies such as gold and silver? You're a banking man. What would your thoughts be on that?"
Absolutely. Look, I'm for a structured financial system. When we went at Bretton Woods, we went off that, and now there's no discipline. I mean, inflation can run rampant, and there's no effect except on the little working guy. He gets killed. I called for an audit of the Fed in 1981. Guess who joined me? Ron Paul. We had that bill on the House floor, and it was defeated. But we need an annual audit, and it needs to be a public audit. We don't even know how much gold we have. By the way, let me give you a tip as a businessman. The greatest buy in America today is a home. It's at 1980 values as measured in gold. You hear what I'm telling you? If you're a young married couple, or if you're somebody that's interested in buying a house, I'm not in the housing business, so this doesn't feather my nest, but I saw a statistic the other day that is measured by the price of gold. The average home is now down to 1980 prices.
Well, let me ask you, what would you say to somebody that is on the other side, that they bought in 06, 07, everything, the bottom has fallen out, the banks won't talk to them, the interest rate is what it is, and they're upside down, in some cases many 200, 300, 400% underwater? What do you tell that person who's been trying to make sense out of this and just feels like the system's so broken they got to opt out of it and really kill their credit and go through some uncomfortable stuff because of it? What do you say to that person who's been caught up in the tsunami?
Well, it's not easy, but it's time to face reality. There are two big animals in your room when you look at this. One is the word that you've given as a borrower of money, and that's a big word. That'll trail you most of your life if you go back on that. And number two are the dollars and cents of whether you're upside down or right side up on your mortgage. And I would go immediately to my bank, and I hope you have a community bank with a relationship to it. My little bank, my bank's about $750 million this morning. We didn't foreclose on a single mortgage holder. We restructured the debt of every mortgager who wanted to come out whole. Now, we had a few walk away, and we had to bite that. We did that as a bank. But most of our people, when we went to them, went over the numbers with them and worked with them, not in our interest, but in their interest. And here's my thinking, Brian. If you treat your customers like they're your favorite people on earth, they will give you that back. We have made money every quarter during this recession. Every quarter. We're one of the few banks in America have done that, and we didn't foreclose on a single mortgage holder. Hello?
Well, some people are saying that it feels like the banks are actually going to make more money through a foreclosure than through working with the client. What do you say to people claiming this?
I would raise holy hell. It's true in some instances. I think the banks just had a $25 billion settlement on the redundant on the robo signings and all the other rules that they broke. The banks are getting off cheap. These are the big boys. These are not the little guys. The big boys own 85% of all the mortgages in the country. That's the top 6 banks. And they want to get this off their back. And they paid $25 billion. You know what the upside down number is, Brian? $706 billion. And the bank got out of the trap for $25 billion. Now, the real trap is in Washington, D.C., Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And President Obama, when he ran for president, said he would get rid of them. They're bigger today than when he got elected. It is a disgrace.
It's another bubble waiting to pop. We're talking live with Buddy Roemer.
Absolutely.
Buddy is on the campaign trail running for 2012 American presidential candidate. Buddy, we're going to let you run here in a second. I want to bounce through. We're getting a couple of questions here, and I just want a really quick question and a really quick answer. All right. Do you see the student loan debt crisis as a critical issue of the 2012 campaign, talking about bubbles?
I do. Not the size of the mortgage wrong side up situation, but an important situation, because here's why. Let's just talk practically. We're in competition with the world. I mean, although the Chinese compete unfairly, we'll talk about that later if you'd like to.
Sure thing.
I see they're in Los Angeles now signing an agreement with DreamWorks to get their animation done in China. You know, China promised us when they joined the WTO 10 years ago they would let off the restrictions on our movies coming to China. It hadn't. It's 20 movies a year. That's all they let come to China. I mean, they do not trade fairly. But back to the loans. We're in competition with the world. We need more education. We need more students to go. We need to make this as affordable as possible. Here's what I would do. I would follow a program of the Great Depression called the Rural Electrification Administration, REA, where we sent electricity out to rural areas so we could help their living standards and develop America. And here's what the Congress did then. They didn't give the money away to start those programs. They lent it. What they did was lower the interest rate from the then 4% that was across the land to 2%. So the government subsidized rural electrification because the power companies wouldn't go to the rural areas. There weren't enough customers. So Congress figured out how to do it. Let the market do it. Let cooperatives be formed. Let the citizens of the rural area run it. And all the government will subsidize is the cost of the money by 2%. We built America that way, and it didn't cost the federal government a penny because the money was all repaid back, just with lower interest. I would do the same thing with student loans. If a student went to school and spent and borrowed the money to do it, and is a good citizen, not in prison, not all these other things, but is trying to make ends meet, I would have the government reduce the interest rate, which now averages 9%. Money costs government about 1%. 9% is the cost now for most of these students. We could bring this down to 4.5% or 5%. The students would still owe it. There'd be no forgiveness here. They'd have to repay it, but they could afford to do it. And instead of taking 20 years or 30 years to repay it, it could be done in 3 or 4. That's what I would do.
And that question came to us from Aaron Califato. He's the creator of a play called For Profit about this burdening of students with almost unpaid debt that is almost unreturnable based on what they get
Yeah.
out and graduate making on
Yeah.
a yearly basis.
Well, look, unless you work for the government. By the way, the federal government's average pay is $110,000. That includes benefits. The average worker makes $61,000 in America, including all benefits. I mean, I've just looked up those numbers. So, unless you work for the federal government, if you've got a private business job, if you're a nurse, if you're a lawyer's assistant, or even if you're a lawyer, your real wages have gone down the last 10 years.
Absolutely. Through inflation.
We have fewer
through-
jobs,
Yep.
and they pay less well than they used to pay. And part of this reason is something that I got into just a little bit, is unfair global trade. We are the suckers in the world. We don't enact our World Trade Organization rights. We don't challenge China as a currency manipulator. I would revoke their permanent, normal trade relations. That should never have been voted to begin with. As you know, Brian, I've been to China many times. I've been in every province in China. There are 30 of them, and I didn't take a government trip. I paid for my own pay. I went to China for 53 days the first time I went over there. I wanted to know something about this country, and that was 15 years ago. I wanted to know how it worked, how the Communist Party worked, whether or not we could believe them when they said they would do fair trade with us. Well, let me give America some news. You cannot believe them. They do not do fair trade. The people of China are wonderful people, but the government is a communist dictatorship, and they have one thing in mind: to bring us to our knees and become the number one country in the world. Watch what I'm telling you.
Well, this brings up the question from Matt Williams. He asked, do you think our election system can be repaired? If things are so competitive on a global scale and the election system is broken, Matt Williams was specifically asking your thoughts on the main caucus debacle, what should be done with the complicit state GOP chairman, and the fact that they can't even count the votes right in Iowa, Nevada, you got Maine, and the whole system feels very rigged. A joke.
Look, I've never run for president before. And I would love, as I travel the country, why don't you guys come out and talk to me? I mean, I'll come to all states. I'll come to every part of the country and talk about this country and its election system. I mean, they charged me $35,000 to be on the ballot in South Carolina. I couldn't afford that. I've raised about $500,000. My average gift is $25 a person. I have 20,000 contributors. No other candidate has that. I've raised money from every state. California is a close second to Louisiana, Texas third, Oregon fourth, New York fifth, Florida sixth. I mean, every state in America has stepped up to say, let's give Roemer a chance. Let's look at this system. But to answer your question directly, we can reform it. The next president has the first words out of his mouth is that my number one priority is reform. We have a great nation, but we must reform how it elects presidents and Congress, who is accountable, criminal penalties, transparency, full disclosure, and that is constitutionally legal. And what happened in Maine, what happened in Iowa, what happened in South Carolina, what happened in Florida, where the president of the Republican Party there decided who was going to be on the ballot. And I was ahead of 3 Republicans. I was ahead of John Huntsman. I was ahead of Rick Santorum. I was ahead of Gary Johnson. And I was not put on the ballot. It is arbitrary. It is capricious. It is confusing. It is not democratic. It is not fair. We have been lucky to get our presidents. Our luck might be running out in this century.
Well, let's wrap it up on this question here, because you're trying to focus on the things that are constitutional and legal and common sense and straightforward and fair. This question comes from John Odermatt. He says, what is your foreign policy? Do you believe in fighting only declared wars, and would you bring home troops from Iraq, Afghanistan, Germany, Japan, South Korea, Australia, etc.?
I'm a bring them home guy. I was that way in the Congress. I do believe America has a special responsibility. We are a nation of immigrants. People come here for freedom and opportunity. It's how our country got started. So I'm not saying that we turn our back on the world. More of our economy is tied into the global marketplace. There's no turning away from that. And I think the government ought to be involved in fair trade. I think the government ought to be involved in the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons. I think the government, and by the way, I would use our economic power. I would not allow any product made with Iranian oil to be imported into the United States. We'd get their attention. We'd get the whole world's attention. We are the best market on earth. We don't need to send the Marines to Iran. We need to send our economic might. But my foreign policy would be no cash foreign aid. We can teach. We can demonstrate. We can show them how, but we're not going to buy off dictators with our cash. I'm for a strong military, but I'm for closing down a third or more of foreign bases that we have around the world. We have 1,100 bases. I have not, in my experience of the last 30 years, seen any need for more than a third or 40% of that. We can save money. We need to stop. We need to be energy independent to stop having Marines go on oil duty. I'm opposed to it. I'm for a practical, hard-hitting, freedom-loving, constitutional foreign policy that does not allow the president to declare war. Congress does that, and I will live that to the letter of the law.
Well, Buddy, that it's nice hearing that, because I've also finished reading The Art of War in the past week, and you know the summarization of that is, and I will paraphrase: if you're always fighting people at war, you're going to go broke and ruin your country.
Yes.
You know, to get that simple
what was the
translation.
example I gave you on excessive debt shrinks a nation? I gave you Napoleon and the money
France.
he owed to Belgium, and the fact that he lost the New World. Look. We've lost the space race. We've already done that from something we can't afford. It's time. Look, it's time for this president. This president won't do it, but it's time for the next president, and I assume that responsibility to make the tough decisions to get our budget in balance, to pay our bills, to give value to the American dollar, therefore turning the gasoline prices back to what they were when Obama was elected. Do you know what the price of a gallon of gasoline was when Obama was elected, Brian?
$1.96.
$1.81. You're pretty
close. Pretty close. Ballpark.
You're pretty close. $1.81, and we can get back there. We can get that there by having America energy independent, using natural gas. Let's get on with it. I'm excited about America. Let me just say that. I know I'm not known, and I know I've got to figure out a way, and I'm going to have an announcement next week, Brian. You're the first radio show I've said that on. I'm going to have an announcement toward the end of next week that will galvanize you, I believe. But I am not giving up a chance to make America strong again, and no party is going to stop me.
Well,
the Democrats couldn't. The Republicans are not going to be able to. We're going to take this to the American people.
Well, let me tell you this, Buddy. The beautiful thing, and I've tried like hell over the past 2 weeks, as I've been speaking with Carrie in your campaign to organize this interview, I've been trying like hell to avoid learning about you, because there's so much spin and slant from MSNBC, from Fox, from a lot of places. There's so much spin and slant. I said, you know what, let me go into this barely knowing very much about Mr. Roemer. And let's approach it as so many people out there in our country that are not aware of you, your history, your candidacy, of how the system works and how it doesn't work. I think there's a lot of people that might benefit from my ignorance of you and some of your history and some of your talking points. I think it's good because there's a lot of people in our country that want to pay attention. We're just bombarded with a bunch of nonsense so much where we just start to tune out. So I'm trying to approach it from a fresh perspective and say, look, I have no particular horse in this race. I like the freedom and liberty stuff that's coming out of Ron Paul, but I'm not necessarily sold on him 100% as a candidate. but I'm not sold on anybody 100%. And I'm very happy to have you on here because there's a lot of overlap in some of your common sense stuff. And having been both a Republican and Democrat, having served in Congress and as a governor, you at least understand what you're getting involved in. You've been swimming in this ocean for a while, and I want to give you the opportunity now, as we say goodbye, speak to those people that don't know you very well, wrap it up in your neatest little elevator pitch, and I would, of course, love to have you back on the program again after your big announcement.
That's the deal. We'll do it in the next couple of weeks, and we'll work with you on that. I love America. I love America. I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I was born in America. But we're a nation in decline. We're losing our freedoms. We're losing the self-reliance that comes from a freedom-loving people. But I believe there's nothing wrong with America that we can't correct. We can do this, guys. And I don't think one party is going to do it. I'm a Republican, and I'm proud to be a Republican. But I'm prouder to be an American. I think we need a leader free to lead. I think that's the number one issue in the country. Budget reform, yes. Tax reform, yes. Energy reform, yes. Fair trade reform, yes. Immigration reform, yes. Bank reform, yes. Healthcare reform. But the number one reform is to kick the special interests, lobbyists and PACs with their big checks out of the room and let plain people come in. This is what I'll do. I take $100 or less, that's it. No PACs. I've never taken PAC money running for office, and I've been elected congressman 4 times and governor of the toughest state in America that was corrupt. I beat a guy that had $20 million. I spent less than $1 million, and I whipped him. It can be done. I need a million people to stand with me, and let me give you my website. It's BuddyRoemer.com, and Roemer is spelled R-O-E-M-E-R. If you've never given a penny to a presidential candidate, start with me. We'll turn this country around.
Buddy, it's been fantastic having you on the program. We will do this again as soon as you're ready. I wish you good luck in the campaign. It can be quite brutal, and you're fighting uphill, but you've seen in this election more so than any I can recall in the past few decades. You go from worst to first
it's wide open.
In the blink of an eye. The delegates are all still out there.
Brian, it's wide open because they don't have a leader yet. They don't have one. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. We'll call in a couple of weeks after I make my announcement, and we'll go from there.
Sounds like a plan, buddy. Thank you for your time. That was Governor Buddy Roemer running for president in 2012. I liked a lot of what I had to hear right there. And I want to get your thoughts. Send us a direct message on Twitter. We're at American_media_. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back here on Agree to Disagree. I am your host, Brian Engelman, and you are listening to thenewamericanmedia.com.
You are listening to the Agree to Disagree program on thenewamericanmedia.com.
Hi, Brian from thenewamericanmedia.com. Last year I had this idea. I wanted to start a website of my own, not just a presence on Twitter, a presence on Facebook, and have a thing. I wanted a website. I wanted a home base for all of the ideas and things I'm interested in. I wanted live radio. I wanted to communicate with the globe. I was tired of being spoon-fed dogma by corporate interests and just, here, believe this, believe this. I said, no, I think there's something underneath the surface, but I didn't know how to do it. So I contacted Ted Distel of disteldesign.com. Ted walked us through the process of, okay, you want videos, you want to do quotes of the day, you want to have a spiritual section, you want to have a 1984 watch where government's intruding and private corporations are intruding into your privacy. Yeah, those are the things that I was interested in. Ted walked me through the process. We built thenewamericanmedia.com, and I encourage you to go online and take a look at our site. That's what he's capable of. Please, if you have an idea, go to disteldesign.com. That's DISTEL design.com.
Have you ever considered adopting a pet to be part of your family? Our animal companions can be just as close to us as our human companions. If you're considering adoption, please visit your local shelter and adopt a pet today. Shelter pets make the best pets.
Follow thenewamericanmedia.com on Twitter at American_media_.
Hi, it's Brian from the NewAmericanMedia.com. I'm a sports fan. I was raised in Cleveland, spent 25 years in Ohio. I watched the drive, the fumble, the shot too. I watched Art Modell steal the Cleveland Browns and win a Super Bowl over in Baltimore. I watched a horrible coach named Bill Belichick go on to the Patriots and win Super Bowls over there. Hooray. I am a bitter sports fan. Let's not even talk about what happened with he who shall not be named who went to South Beach to take his talents there. Excuse me, I almost threw up in my mouth a little bit there. I'm a sports fan who cares to talk about the things that matter to me. That is the Indians, the Cavs, the Browns, and the Buckeyes. But of course, I pay attention to national sports, and we discuss that on our show as well. That's why we have The Unhappy Hour every single Friday at 3:30 p.m. Pacific. Sit down, have a drink. It's the end of a long work week, and we can all get together and talk about the unhappy times that we've had as sports fans. We've all had them. We've had ups and downs, but as Cleveland fans, we only have downs. Join us.
You are listening to the Agree to Disagree program on the NewAmericanMedia.com.
Hello, everybody. This is Brian. Thank you, and welcome back to the program. Thank you so much, Governor Buddy Roemer, running for president. It's not an easy thing to do. There's a lot of people that say it's almost an act of insanity in itself to put yourself through what you have to go through. I mean, all the personal attacks and all the fighting for power. It's really difficult, you know. And I've really been trying, as I told Buddy, as he asked me to call him, Mr. Roemer, Governor Buddy Roemer. The whole process feels rigged. It feels you can't count the votes right in Maine or Iowa or Nevada. It seems like forces or money are pushing particular candidates, be it Barack Obama for a second term or Mitt Romney. But it feels wide open as a presidential race, like people are not really happy with the choices yet. And maybe that they're not happy with the choices, but maybe people aren't happy that the conversation is incorrect. You need a lot of different opinions on what's going on. And I mean, this gentleman, he has a lot of ideas: tax reform, budget reform, trade reform, energy reform, banking reform, healthcare reform, immigration reform. But he's also realistic enough to realize we're not very powerful to handle those internal issues when you're $16 trillion in debt to other people. That government has grown to an unhealthy point in history. It's just feasting on itself and getting bigger. You have SOPA, PIPA, net neutrality, Patriot Act, NDAA. I mean, these are not good things. And who's out there as your president? Who's defending you? Who is it standing up for, to do the uncomfortable thing because it's the right thing? Does it feel like the banks are calling the shots? Does it feel like your politicians are actually community representatives who are only up there so that you can focus on your daily life and do what you would do if you were there? That's what it's supposed to be, not career politicians. Now, Mr. Roemer has a lot of experience in government. Governor in Congress, as a Republican, as a Democrat. Very interesting. Because I'm sure doing that, you've seen both sides. But we started our conversation with my question, that there's a lot of people that feel as though Democrat and Republican, they're just two sides of the same coin. It's just a select group of oligarchy, those of privilege who keep us arguing over fringe issues while our country is being sold out right from underneath us. And I think Mr. Roemer's on point with something. He can talk about, why do you have to pay $35,000 to get your name on a ballot in a state? What did he say, Virginia? I'll have to double-check that one. He said he had to pay all that money to get his name on the ballot. I don't know. I want a healthy, robust debate. I don't want to hear 3 points of view or 4 points of view. And some could say, well, we had a lot of different people. We had Rick Perry in the race. We had Michelle Bachmann in the race. The Democrats are not putting up a series of voices to challenge each other. They're rallying behind 4.5 more years of President Barack Obama. So that side is very stifled. If you agree with some things that Barack Obama has said he wants to do or has accomplished, but you're unhappy with others, where do those people go? Where do they turn to? They could say, well, I'm not a Republican, so I'm not going to even think about that. Really? I don't know. You have a conservative Democrat. I know such a thing used to exist. I think they said around the time of Kennedy. I don't know. At what point do you say, all right, I'm going to listen to somebody outside of the party I typically vote for? Are we grown up enough to try that? I am. That's why we have the Agree to Disagree program. There's not one candidate out there I agree with 100%. And I change my mind. I learn new things. I think there's some validity in labeling somebody a flip-flopper. I get that. But what did he say? That he was standing up with Dr. Ron Paul back in, what was it, 1981? Trying to warn of certain things? 3 decades later, those certain things, maybe we should have listened. And why aren't we listening? There are all these politicians promising us stuff. But what's most important to me, we can fix any bad system. We can vote somebody bad out of office. We can do that if we maintain the Constitution and Bill of Rights. Ben Franklin so famously stated, and allow me to paraphrase again. Ben Franklin said, be careful in attempting to trade some of your liberty for security, because surely if you give away your liberty, you will end up losing your security. Because that's the only liberty you have is being free and not... You sign certain parts of the Constitution away. What are you going to be safe from? You're not even safe from yourself anymore. That's what people 230-some years ago, that's what they broke free from an oppressive king to change. They said, enough. You guys want to do that here? Fine. I'm going to go swim across this pond. Might take me a few months, but I'm going to go swim over here in rugged terrain where I don't know anyone, and it's going to be very difficult because I'll do anything to live under my own power, my own rules. The libertarian concept of do what you will, but don't break my leg or pick my pocket doing it. These are good American values. We reference the Catholic Church debate. This is a social issue, and I tend to just be more libertarian on that. But the libertarian point of view is, don't force somebody through confiscation by means of taxes to do something that's against their morals, and don't ban something that other people say they should be morally able to do and make their choice. We can have the debate about it, but government shouldn't force people to do something they disagree with. Healthcare, they're forcing you to do stuff. They're forcing you to purchase a product. Where in the hell in the Constitution does it say you have to purchase a product? The 10th Amendment says that if it's not specifically written in these documents, the states handle this. So this whole healthcare debate, it's just unconstitutional. I would like to reform the program. I would love to kind of try some new ideas out in healthcare. I'm open to that. Frankly, I don't understand why you can buy car insurance anywhere, but you have to have your health insurance through a job. Let's try a few things out. I'm open to that, but I'm not open to 2,300 pages that Nancy Pelosi says, I cannot wait until we pass it to find out what's in it. Come on, man. We smell a rat. We're Americans. We're smart. Don't let anyone tell you that we're dumb and lazy. We may have been distracted for a little while. But we're good people. We're smart. Our common sense, our spidey senses are very strong when it comes to common sense. And my senses are telling me that Buddy Roemer whether you agree with him or not, whether you think he's capable of being president or not, whether you think he would make the best candidate to debate Barack Obama. It doesn't matter. I think he has a track record. I think he's proven that he's serious about this. And we've lost so many other people in the GOP debates. Bachman, Perry, Huntsman, Tim Pawlenty, remember that guy? Come on, man, Americans are busy. We don't have time for all this stuff. But at least if we're going to tune into a debate, let's pump some new blood into it. This guy's saying, hey, let me in. And I say, let him in. You know, let's have the conversation. Let's have the debate. And that's what we do every week here on Agree to Disagree. I want to thank everybody for listening. This is a great show. I have no doubt that we are going to have him back on the program, Governor Buddy Roemer. So that was fantastic. We will do this again. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we're going to be right back. If you noticed, our time was a little off from 2:30 to 3:30 Pacific. That was to accommodate the Buddy Roemer for President campaign. And we're more than pleased to do such a thing, because if they're not getting any attention through the mainstream media, that's what the new American media is here for. We'll give you a platform. We'll put it up on YouTube. We'll embed it on the newamericanmedia.com. We'll tweet it out at American_media_. Let's spread the word. We'll be right back in just a second. Thank you for listening. I'm Brian. We'll be right back with the Unhappy Hour live sports radio program.
You were listening to the Unhappy Hour sports radio show on the newamericanmedia.com.